Welcome, everybody. I'd like to thank you for being a part of our meeting tonight. This is our regular city council meeting scheduled November 13, 2013. At this time, we will call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council members, you were all given your packet this weekend. You also received it electronically. You had the opportunity to look it over the weekend. Share any questions with our city administrator or hope if you had any. At this time, I will accept any motions to approve tonight's agenda. So thank you, Councilmember Sullivan, seconded by Councilmember Tui. Any comments, concerns? If not, discussion. If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving into the consent agenda, all items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the city council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be acted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. Mr. Roby, do you want to kind of review these with us, please?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I apologize for the small print up there. It's all spelled out in your agendas. 11 items today on the consent agenda. The first of which is approval of city council minutes from the last meeting, October 23rd, 2023. Second, approval of disbursements through today. Included in those disbursements are 10 items over $25,000. First to MMPA, care of Avant Energy, $651,243.08 for our October 2023 purchase power. Second to Landmark Structures, payment application number 22 for the water tower, $190,981.25. Third to Pember Companies, payment application 12 for the South Main Street project, $111,279.07. Item 4, Instamix USA Incorporated for the Dynapack paver, $103,000. Item 5, North Star Truck Sales Incorporated for the Map Plow Truck, $96,607.50. Item 6, Matt Sachs Chevrolet for replacement squad car for the police department, $55,926. Item 7, to Magny Construction, application number 19 for the Well 8 Well House project, $48,867.83. Item 8, to the Minnesota Department of Revenue for the October 2023 city sales tax, $45,499. Item 9, Neo Water Treatment LLC for the FX 300 wastewater material, $41,715.40. And finally, to Wesco Receivables Corporation from Wesco Distribution for a pad-mounted transformer. It's $30,555. Item C is approval of payment application number 22 for the composite elevated water tower. We anticipate the final payment application for that to come in spring of 2024 to close out that project. Item D, approval of resolution R 2023-038, which is final payment for the 2023 street maintenance project, the ceiling component. Item E, approve the Rotary Club's 2023 turkey trot request for support and in-kind donation. Item F, approve the Christmas in the Valley request for support and in-kind donation. Item G, one personnel action is the hiring of a fitness instructor at the community center. Item H, approval of resolution R 2023-040, accepting bids and awarding contract for the steel related to the Main Street substation project. Item I, approval of resolution R 2023-041, certification of the 2023 delinquent utility accounts. Item J, approval of the HRA commission appointments. There are 3 appointments as part of that agenda item. And item K, approval of the fire chief reappointment. The fire department has recommended to the city the reappointment of Chief Jesse Wench for another year. That's an annual, correct?
Thank you.
My question item 4I, pulled from the consent agenda, please, for further discussion.
We've already voted on the agenda, have we not?
Not the consent agenda. I thought he just went through that.
We voted on the agenda that was laid out, that includes the agenda.
The regular agenda.
The approval of the whole agenda.
Right. But the consent agenda,
If there's gonna be subsequent discussion, it does need to be pulled.
right.
But tenuous.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he read, the consent agenda. And so I waited for Administrator Roby to go through it. And now I'm assuming that this would be the time.
But I think if we're following Robert's rules, item number 3 is approval of the agenda. At that time,
That includes the consent agenda and
at
regular.
that time, if we wanted something pulled, we should have pulled it then. And just,
Well, I didn't know that.
But I will, yes.
I've got 5 minutes and then I'm out.
No, and that's fine. We've been down this road before with this same thing where somebody wants to pull something off the consent
So
agenda.
tell me when I should do it. At item 3?
Yeah, item 3, when I'm asking for the
I
approval.
apologize.
Tonight, I'm gonna give you some leeway. We will pull it tonight, Mr.
Okay.
Tui. And we will, if that's okay with you, Mr. Roby.
It's technically against the rules, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I would say, however, if the individual who made the motion wants to, since it's still in the meeting, the individual who made the motion initially to approve the agenda can ask for a vote to redo their initial motion to approve the
I believe
agenda.
that was you, Mr. Sullivan.
I mean, I'll make the amendment that we remove this item.
Okay.
I'll amend my initial motion that approve the agenda, removing this item for, is it 4I?
4I.
4I from the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda other than 4I, which we moved to the regular agenda. We got that.
Can I clarify that real quick? Before we vote on the consent, so right now there's a motion and a second on the table for the consent agenda. We would need to amend the motion for the consent agenda.
So that's the motion that you need.
We need to amend that and then vote on the consent agenda, and then the council could consider going back to the agenda approval motion. So, because right now on the floor is the motion and second for the consent agenda.
does that happen?
I was gonna say, who made that motion?
I don't think we've made a motion to approve the consent
We
agenda.
have not.
Wasn't there a motion made?
That's why
Oh, I
I
apologize.
waited. Yeah. There has been no motion to approve the
Okay.
consent agenda.
Okay, so let's do this. Mr. Sullivan has made a motion to amend his initial motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second for
I
that?
second.
Was he the original second? I think you were originally.
I was.
Okay, and that amendment is item, help me out again.
4I
4I.
on the consent agenda.
Okay, all those we have a motion, a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay. The ayes have it, so we will pull item 4I and move that to the regular agenda.
Thank you.
And in the future, when we approve the agenda, that includes the regular agenda and the consent agenda, Mr. Dewey. I think everybody understands that. Okay?
I didn't. I appreciate it.
We've had this happen one other time, so, but that's fine. We will work our way through it. So that takes us to,
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
is that where we're at? Okay,
So moved.
Mr. Sullivan, second by Mr. Sullivan. The initial agendas or the initial motions by Mr. Swan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. So with that, we will move on to public comment. Mr. Dewey will pull the sheet for me. Public comment provides an opportunity for the public to address the council for items that are not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Persons wishing to make comments will sign up in advance of the meeting and provide their, identify themselves with their address on the sheet, which I have in front of me. So with that, Mr. Matt Bishop, I was visiting with you in the hallway. I'd like to have you step up and share what you want to share with us tonight. And once you're done, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, or you can depart. It's up to you. So welcome.
We're on here?
We are.
Yeah, so this summer I went solar and find out there's a second service charge on solar accounts. I want to explain how crippling that is to one's ability to go solar, which I think most people think is the right thing to do or a good thing to do in either case. I'm told the extra charge is for labor associated with solar accounts, yet no one is working overtime. The work's getting done in 40-hour work weeks. And this month, as an example, I'm on track to make $40 worth of energy. And I want to pay $40 in service charges. Everybody gets 20, part of the, across the board service charge. Solar accounts having the extra $20 is crippling. I don't think it invites anybody to go solar. It actually does the opposite. Had I known that, I wouldn't have done it myself because it's a straight loss to one's bottom line. And I'm not even making money by going solar. I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And $20 is just a further loss for me. So to my knowledge, I may have the most panels residentially that I'm aware of. I know of maybe 6 other homes. I have 24 panels. I've seen 8, I've seen 20, but I have 24, and of course trees and other things affect. And that doesn't mean I'm making the most generation of energy, but I'm on track to make $40 this month. And it's all gone in service charges. And I still have my payments on the solar. I signed up for that, I get it. But I'm asking what needs to be done. If I need to do anything to present this back for a vote, my opinion is the second service charge is absolutely crippling to people that want to go solar. And that's all I did, write a letter, email to the council members. One of them bounced back, otherwise to try to, give further information. I didn't get any feedback, and I don't know the process, but I would like this to be brought back for a vote for removal.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Emails are nice. I'm glad you're communicating with us email, but this is even more important that you're here tonight and voicing your opinion and your feelings on this matter. We appreciate that. This is something we'll have to take up and put onto our agenda in the future. Mr. Roby, if you don't mind, can you review our policy on service charges for regular electricity and renewable energy?
Certainly. So as Mr. Bishop said, there's a $20 fee per meter for each residential electric account. Since I believe 2020, the city has also charged an additional behind the meter fee for those who have solar installations, which is not uncommon in state council when they considered adding it. It's statutory. The city's allowed to, so the city follows a policy that a lot of utilities follow that say that if there's that essentially utilities can add any additional fees they want. And what the city council had decided at the time was because it's a separate utility account altogether, because there is extra work involved in preparing the statements and measuring and cutting monthly checks to those who generate more electricity than they use, because statutorily we have to send that money back to the customers. And because they're in council's mind at the time, there should be some fee associated with being connected to the grid, whether you need it or not. So in some cases, individuals are able to generate enough or even more than enough to power their homes. But at the end of the day, they're still required to be connected to the grid, and we are still required to have the infrastructure in place so that if the panels were to fail or whatever scenario, that they would still be able to receive power through the utility. And every year, just one final comment, so every year, as part of the governmental fee schedule that city council considers, that fee is on that list. So when we discuss our permit fees and our rental fees and community center membership fees, that fee is on there. So the governmental fee schedule will be presented to city council again at the first meeting in December, as it is every year, for city council consideration.
So just to be clear, for a separate meter for solar energy, it's $40 a month. Is that correct?
It's $20 for your meter and then $20 for behind the meter, yes.
Mr. Bishop, you mind taking the microphone again? What type of savings do you think you generate a month with these solar panels? Is it,
Zero.
I'm sorry,
Zero.
zero? Is it because of the,
I mean, the deal is you'll generate more in the summer. You'll potentially lose, not potentially, will lose in the fall through winter months. And on average, you at best hope to break even. I do not think I will break even prior to the the second $20 service charge. So my average usage was about 130 kilowatts. On average for the year, I'll probably generate between 100 to 110.
well, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. And Joe, quick question for you. You don't know how many people looked up in our community to solar energy, or how many meters do we have out there?
Mr. Graff can maybe correct me, but I believe we have in the neighborhood of 10 customers right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say 10 to 15, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I appreciate you sharing this with us. We're gonna take this up in some further discussion with probably some personnel and budget meetings, and we'll bring this to the council if we see it necessary. But I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and you're kind of leading the way with renewable energy, and we don't want this to hinder anybody thinking about doing that. So we want to be fair to you, but we want to be fair to the community too. So thank you, Matt.
All right, you're welcome.
Secondly, we have Mr. Lauren Edward here. I'd like to step up to the podium, please, and I would imagine you'd like to visit with us about Christmas in the Valley.
I would love to visit with you guys. So as my yearly time here, I'm the chair of Christmas in the Valley. And I think as everyone has realized what an event this really is, there is a couple things that we're going to need to kind of get through so that we can put on the event once again. Our biggest thing about Christmas in the Valley that maybe some council members don't really realize is what the impact of the community really is. The impact isn't so much for the residents that come and enjoy it. It's what the impact is we are bringing corporate, retail, schools, hospital, residents all together to put this on all year long. This is a community event that is like none other. We don't have any other event like this in the city of Sueur. Reason for that is because this is something that a lot of people have gone back and found out that, you know what, this is the time for us all to be together, to reflect on something that is very caring into all of our hearts. With that being said, about 8 years ago, we created the gathering tree of life that the city and the Rotary Club put together. From that point, it just transpired onto many other things. Right now, what we're going to be doing this year is we're going to be having 2 new things. We are going to be having a parade of trees that are only going to be usable by the organizations of this community so that we can recognize somebody that's a little bit different, like the Scouts and or the wrestling club, I believe, is putting up a tree just so that they can get recognition out there that they're a part of the city and what they're really a part of. That's the whole point of Christmas in the Valley, is to get recognition out there and to drive down Festival Street and down Main Street on night in December and admire the lights and admire what's going on in the city. And we're trying to pull people from other towns just to come and see what we really have here. Every year we're trying to add something a little bit different. And this is like every other year we are adding a couple other things that are going to be new. This year, the tree is going to be lit to actually start the parade. And as you know that we've had some issues with the parade route and where that's going to be. And this is where I need to put a little bit on the city council here. We need to be able to have better say, I think, in our town with the state of Minnesota, where they're not allowing us to shut down some streets for different reasons. And I don't know if that's correct. And I think this is where we need to kind of look at different things of how we can make some of those things together, you know, and try to bring MnDOT in on a real meeting and really sit down and say, I don't quite understand how the city of Henderson be able to shut down the state highway for a couple hours during their parade. And it doesn't seem like they have much of an issue. But it sure seems like we have some issue here when we try to shut down the parade route for the night. Doesn't seem to bother anyone when, or at least the state of Minnesota, when a semi gets caught underneath the bridge either. So that's just a joke. But I mean, at the same point, it's the same type of issue. This is the type of stuff where the Sueur city would be a very big help if we could help with that type of a process. We did try this year. Mr. Roby did put an application in, but I think this is the type of stuff that we need to bring in as a true meeting with MnDOT and, you know, have some good conversation about it so that we can actually put on an event that's meant to be. Right now, we're taking the parade route this year down 2nd Street to 5th Street, down Main Street to Festival Street. And it's kind of dodging a little bit because we can't use Main Street as a shutdown area right now. If we could have that entire block or a couple blocks there rectangle, now we have a thing that can really meet the needs of people that can go into their cars, watch the parade, and or sit alongside the parade route. So that's something that we're working on, and that's something that we're going to need to continue on. This year, for the first time, we've actually combined 4 different groups together, which is going to be the City of Sueur in kind, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotarians, and then also the Lions Club. All 4 of those places are putting on Christmas in the Valley, and that will continue that way from now on. I think that's showing what we're doing together as a community. Didn't I have any questions?
Anybody? Mr. Edberg, as always, thank you. Appreciate your work with the Christmas in the Valley. We're all looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our city administrator update. Mr. Roby, you want to let us know what's going on?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm sorry, I didn't catch up. Did you have something else to add?
We just want to know what's going on in your world.
Oh, okay. I'll keep it brief. The staff are chuckling because I can't keep anything brief. Thanks, Corey, for the straight face on that one. Appreciate it. Last week, we had a Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities LGA and Property Tax Committee meeting, which sounds as invigorating as it is. Although I will say it's really valuable because I can sit in on the committee and it helps drive what CGMC's legislative priorities will be for the upcoming legislative session. And so I made sure that I put in a plug, and I hope to see it on their final list of policy issues that they will take to the Capitol around property valuations within Sueur County. And we know we're not the only county that struggles with this. The kind of mismatch between residential and industrial commercial, just to make sure that we can, if we can encourage the legislature to do something about that, we'd like them to. Last week we had a climate smart municipalities meeting. Those are always really interesting to hear what our friends around the state are doing, and throughout Region 9, and also our colleagues over across the Atlantic Ocean. Lots of Germans on the call, and Germany is a long ways ahead of where we are as a nation as far as renewables. Last week, the mayor and I participated in a joint school city meeting. It was a great touch base with Superintendent Wagner. Talked about a few different things, long-term strategy, some short-term operational items, see what the school has planning over the next couple of years here, get a status update on the building of the new elementary school, things like that. Planning Commission last week, we discussed the rezoning of the land that's currently owned by the EDA. This will be on the next City Council agenda for the November 27th meeting. Will be consideration of rezoning of the EDA land. Right now, the comp plan and the zoning map don't align, and we'd like to align that by zoning that entire property highway commercial. We had a personal budget committee last week to discuss the budget primarily for 2024. Had a really good fire commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, where we announced, and I'm going to try to get them in here before the end of the year, the retirement of firefighter Kevin Brandt. Kevin retired after 25 years with the Sueur Fire Department. So I'd like to thank Kevin very much for his service. I acknowledge all of his years of late night pager calls and Tuesday evenings at the fire hall. RPAC met last week. I wasn't able to make it to the meeting. One of the things that RPAC discussed was Dash Sports. Dash Sports, I'll be sending out a memo that's from Recreation Manager Watkins and myself. And one of the struggles that I think anyone who's had a child or grandchild or niece or nephew involved in recreation programming in the last 15 years anywhere recognize that it's difficult to keep up on equipment repairs. So certification of football helmets, for example, is thousands of dollars just to recertify football helmets. It's very difficult to find volunteers because everyone is very, very busy. So what a lot of cities, Mankato, Carver, Lakeville, lots of communities around us have started to do is utilize an outside organization called Dash Sports, which we say to them, hey, we've got some kids who are interested in a running club, but we don't have someone who can coach running necessarily or can commit to coaching running. Can you come in and run that program for us? And they come in, and it's a non-contract. They just say, I need a minimum of X number of kids at this age level to participate. If we get that many, we register them all. Then Dash sends down a vetted, background checked coach to lead that program. So RPAC was interested in staff pursuing that. So we're going to look at that for some of our core activities where we're struggling to get volunteers to lead all of those events. The chamber has started inviting me to their monthly meeting, which is great. Good to visit with them and see what's new with the chamber as they re-envision themselves and try to grow, which is really exciting. Next chamber meeting is this Wednesday night. Two more things really quickly. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we had a successful visit with the House of Representatives Capital Investment Committee down in Mankato last month. I got an email a little over a week ago that the Minnesota State Senate Capital Investment Committee would like to come down to the community center for a visit. So I'll send the details to everyone on council. Everyone is welcome because it is at the community center. It's Tuesday, November 28th. They will be here at 9:55 a.m.
9:54.
Yes, 9:55, and we have exactly 20 minutes. So Allison and I have gone through a preliminary walkthrough of how much we can pack into 20 minutes. It happens to coincide with our Silver Sneakers class that
I'll be there.
week, which is perfect.
I'll be up there.
Great. I think it's between the yoga class and the regular class, because yoga is 9 to 10, and then the Tuesdays, there
I
are two
think they had two,
classes.
I always thought they had 2 silver sneakers in a row.
They do
Yeah.
once yoga
One's
specific.
8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, I think, is the
Oh,
yoga.
9
8
is-
o'clock is your.
Okay.
And 9 o'clock is definitely silver sneakers.
Yeah, they're both silver sneakers.
Okay.
One's the yoga and one's
Well,
the,
they're all sitting in
Classes.
classes. I know that.
yes. So Allison said it would work out great because we would have a lot of folks that are using it. And so we're coming up with a couple ideas to get them around the facility, get them engaged, get them experienced in what a day in the community center looks like, or at least what 20 minutes it looks like. So that's very, very exciting. And finally, I know we just passed Veterans Day, but I would like to acknowledge veterans here on city staff. One of them happens to be in front of us today, Mr. Foster Transberg, who served admirably in the Air Force. Also Donnie Sippo, water wastewater operator, and Joe Sass on our fire department. I want to thank the city employees who served our country, and I was pleased that we were able to participate in the Green Light project. If anyone noticed the green lights in the community center, the PD and City Hall here, thanks to Andy Sinetsky for pulling that together kind of last minute for us. But thank you, Foster and Donnie and Joe, for your service. That's all I have.
Mr. Roby, good report. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions regarding this report? If not, we will move on then to the regular agenda, starting with the item 7, which is adopt, upgrade 10-year streets and utilities, CIP. Mr. Roby, you want to introduce Mr. Corey Beanfang for us?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Beanfang is here at the podium for us tonight. Corey's got 2 agenda items tonight. The first one is an updated 10-year streets and utilities CIP. I won't steal his thunder, but for those who were on council back in May of 2020, you'll recall that council adopted a 10-year CIP at that time. We've gone through COVID, we've gone through a few different projects. And so at a staff level, with Corey's help, we've been revisiting that. What does the next 10 years look like now that we've done some projects? What do our priorities look like? From there, I'll let Corey take it. My clicker's still broken, so if you just take us on.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Joe. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. So that is the action tonight, is to revisit the 10-year CIP. So as Joe mentioned, a little background. So in 2018, the city completed a pavement management plan. And the whole intent of that was just to recognize the investment in infrastructure and really that it's an important element to be planning for and managing, just due to the sheer value of that. That plan, I think, was pretty instrumental then in the creation of the 10-year CIP, kind of the original map that identified the prioritization, kind of the needs, as well as some timing. That in 2020 also coincided with the 5-year street maintenance plan. This spring, we went forward and had an action on before council to update that. And so with some of the staff changes and just the busyness of the summer, it felt appropriate here this fall. We're kind of targeting to update the 10-year CIP, a little more kind of thought and investment just due to the size of the projects. And so that's the reason for the timing tonight. Since that original plan in 2020, we've had 3 successful years of construction, really 2 projects. The Turnback project, which is a 2-year project, a huge improvement from an infrastructure standpoint, streets and utility wise. And then the CASA 36 project, substantially complete last year. Those have been successfully completed. Realizing that time has passed and we're now 3 years later, it felt appropriate to keep this 10-year window of vision too. And so hence the intent and the presence tonight to continue to update that, to have a 10-year window. There's no question 10 years of needs in the community from a street utility standpoint. So constantly reevaluating that and mapping out a full 10-year plan. And that's really what this is intended to guide. These are streets that are beyond recommended maintenance. So we're not seal coating these streets. These are really just band-aided really in all senses of it. Certainly the younger yeared streets, the next 1 to 2 to 3 projects, those aren't getting substantial investment because of the failed condition and really just recognizing that the need is something more substantial. Obviously, the most expensive type of investment in the full reconstruction. So the plan there on the right and in the packet was the original plan in 2020. Thank you, Joel. So as I mentioned, the 5 and 10-year plan, they coincide, maybe not quite literally in the definition, but definitely in the recommendations that are made. So as I mentioned, the 5-year street maintenance plan, we're looking at roads that aren't planned to be, in that 10-year window for reconstruction, typically because the recommended maintenance are on roads that you're trying to preserve life on, not where the life has already been captured and really not there, non-existent. Also, in that there's, recognition, maybe on those later year roadways, those, 7, 8, 9 years out, we are going to be doing some maintenance just to prolong those to try to achieve that. So you're going to see some of that this summer. If you're following the street maintenance plan, we're going to be touching some roads that are kind of later year on this recommended 10-year plan, but just in recognition that we're all far enough where some of those strategies do have to become into the picture then. The 10-year CIP, it's a collective effort of all the city departments. So when we're making recommendations here, streets and utilities, we meant to be pretty all-encompassing. So streets, obviously, we're looking at, the surface of the street, the presence of potholes, and just the rideability of the pavement. Storm, lack of or issues with it, flooding, water, wastewater, water main sizing, water main breaks, type of water main pipe are all things we're evaluating. Wastewater, looking at I&I, clay sewers, failed manholes. So we're really being kind of all comprehensive. And then electrical, we really made an effort on the South Main Street 36 project to be mindful and prioritizing the overhead underground conversion. So we're putting in infrastructure to allow electric to come back and make their conversion, then eliminate poles and overhead lines. We're doing some planning with the street project to make it the impact once for those residents, but also kind of comprehensively capturing improvement for all of the city enterprises. And really what this plan is to have some transparency in the process, not only for the greater community, but also for staff and council to as we get closer to these years of recommended projects. This is a guide that we can reference and everybody can sort of be expecting that we're going to be introducing some conversation to try to advance these through the process to actually become to fruition, to become a true project. So if you don't mind, Joel. So the November updated 2023 plan, as Joe mentioned here, it's been kind of a multifaceted meeting to look at and collaborate what is that 10-year window. And so the map's a little bit tough to see, but we're really starting, in year 2023 here and mapping out for 2033. So that's your full 10-year window and prioritizing. Right now, the plan is laid out to be in every other year construction. You're going to see that. So really recognizing we're in late 2023, the first recommended project is in the 2025. So, a 10-year planning window, but not quite full 10-year construction. These are special assessment projects. So when we're talking about a 2025 construction, we're talking about preliminary engineering planning to start 2024. So it feels timing wise right to be in front of you tonight to start some of those preparations early next year, we're anticipating. And every other year is something we kind of just recognized in the turn back project in 36. We had a couple water projects, South Main Street. The every year construction is pretty grueling on staff and just process. Typically these projects span over a year anyway, the final completion of the wear course. And so from a planning perspective and just a construction perspective, there was some kind of reference that every other year felt right. And there's an affordability piece to that too, of course. So that's the reason for the every other year, 25, 27, 29, if that makes sense. So if you don't mind, Joel. So in summary, the map that we've laid out is identifying locations of the community, and then it's putting a date to it. So it's got some recognition of location to date, and the date is really significant as prioritization of where we feel like the needs are the greatest. So on the 2025 project area, you'll reference that's North 4th Street. And my later agenda item will talk a little bit more about that project in specifics, but that would be the recommended project is that one in dashed red. That would be the next one that staff has believed to be the highest priority. It's a guiding document then. It's dynamic, of course. If you compare the 2020 to the 2023, we flopped some prioritizations and recolored things and moved some streets around, added some streets not previously identified. So the idea is, I don't know what the right timing is, but maybe more frequent than 3 years. We're revisiting this and continuing to prioritize and make sure that we're, recognizing the need and trying to plan for it. And as I mentioned, then the first year of project construction is 2025. So I think it's fair for council to anticipate in early 24. I'd be back before you to start talking about that 429 process, ordering those critical steps to make that project accessible and kind of legal within that state statute. So the intent would be as we work through preliminary engineering and, Q1, Q2 of 24, final design through summer and fall, and get ourselves in position, if all the steps align, to have competitive bids in early year 2025 to be under construction in 2025 throughout the course of the summer. So that just kind of lays out some expectation and some thought to it. So tonight, I think in conversations with Joe kind of leading up to this is, I think, a recommendation of a motion. I can kind of let Joe guide on that, but really it's just a really effort of transparency, that there's a document that we're basing decisions on as we plan, both in the street maintenance, the shorter term window, but also the 10-year to long-term window. Some transparency of recognition where we feel the need is. So when folks are driving those roads and recognizing things, we're showing that we as a city recognize the need and have some structure to the planning to try to address it. So happy to entertain any questions or other discussion on the 10-year plan tonight.
I just have you got 2 red dots.
Yeah.
Right off, I'm curious, what is that?
It's a good question, Councilmember Tui. So the red dots are in quite literally, in this, it's the church parking lot, the Zion Church parking lot. It is, yeah. And so we could talk a while longer tonight about that, but really it's a bit of a carryover from the previous 2020 plan, where we were looking at that time around the 5th, 6th, and 7th South Street neighborhoods. But there's city infrastructure underneath the Zion Church parking lot, the south half of that. It's in an easement. You're very familiar with it. The utilities there are failed. They're beyond life, as we've witnessed and seen here the past year. So there has also been some discussion between city officials and the church leadership. They did an improvement project on the north parking lot a few years ago. And the city requested them not to improve the south parking lot until the city was in position to replace the utilities. And there's just been a constant conversation, I would say, but it hasn't been really identified yet when those city utilities are going to be replaced, just kind of verbally committed. And so I think as a city, we didn't really, I guess it didn't materialize where that improvement's been made yet, but we're trying to honor some commitment there to replace the utilities, so then the church can replace the surfacing. So it's a good partnership in the city's, intent too. The utilities would be the cost of the city, the surfacing would be cost of the church. But they have this money kind of stowed away. I think they're a little bit eager to finish their project. And so I think we as staff would recommend trying to catch those utilities as part of this next project.
Thanks.
So that's a long-winded explanation.
Perfect answer.
Yeah, I would add just one quick thing. Corey referenced this, the failure that we witnessed in this parking lot of the storm sewer infrastructure earlier this year. Anyone who's at all familiar with our stormwater system recognizes the challenge of moving stormwater from Joe Eagle Anderson Park all the way up to the east side of Kingsway Drive. And so that corridor through the Zion UCC parking lot is a key stretch, right, where it brings from the South 5th, 6th, and 7th Street area across to Elmwood. It's got to traipse through the parking lot here. So Corey's spot on. It is, it's been part of an ongoing conversation with the church. They're eager for us to do it. We know we need to do it because we got a problem on that one specific spot, but it also plays into our overall strategy of making sure that we have a complete and successful stormwater system that can get us across Elmwood Avenue, and that problem component can be addressed in this project. And also, when we discuss this at a staff level, it's important that you see South 5th, 6th, and 7th here in 2029, I believe, on the map. And as part of preparing for that, there would be mindfulness in making improvements to the stormwater up to that point. So when we come back in 2029, if we stick to this plan, that we would be able to build South Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh directly into that. So we wouldn't have to redo anything. That would be the goal.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for our city administrator or city engineer? I know that Mr. Sullivan was on the council and I don't know if anybody else was in May of 2020, but this was a pretty big part of our council at that time was this 10-year plan. And I'm pretty delighted with the progress we've been making. I've got to tell you that I know the first few years we've been in partnerships with the state and the county. This presents a little more of a challenge, but it's something that needs to be done. So thank you.
And I would close with one final comment because I have to get in the last word. One thing that I think is important for the community is this is all encompassing from a department standpoint. Hoy referenced it. It's not only street surface to the general public. I get it because I've driven these roads most of my life. It is the drivability of these roads. That's the most important. And while North 4th Street was identified as the next project, the highest priority right now in this plan, in spots, that's not necessarily the worst driving surface in town. And we know that, right? But what we also know is that when we look at electric, when we look at water, when we look at wastewater, this is a problematic area as well, where we really need to get in and replace some of those utilities, wastewater pipe that's clay or has major intrusion. We do not have any stormwater infrastructure in this stretch at all. So we're relying on gravity and hope that the water ends up in the right place at this point. So we need to put stormwater systems in place along this stretch. That's going to be critical to not only the road surface, but also for property owners. So when we sat down and we had our kind of final huddle last week at staff level, we had electric there, water, wastewater, public works, Ryan there to watch the budget and kind of hatched it out and said, okay, when we aggregate all of this, all of our needs, what's the highest priority? And yeah, there are spots on Dexter Street that I know are probably worse than most places on North 4th Street. But the overall greatest need for the community is in the North 4th corridor. So I appreciate everyone on staff and their honesty and insight through that process.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Moving on to the action that's in front of us, and that is the staff recommends City Council adopt the November 2023 10-year CIP for streets and utility improvements and direct staff to continue the process of implementation. We have a motion.
So, second.
I think it was Mr. Sullivan first. Okay. Second by Mr. Schluter. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to resolution R 2023-037. That's awesome. Go ahead, Mr. Wilby. You did pretty fast there.
Sorry.
That's right. Go ahead and pick it up.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This one's pretty fresh to council. At the last meeting, October 23rd, as you recall, the city council voted to approve the purchase of some equipment for our street maintenance. And speaking of our 5-year plan that Corey referenced earlier, as part of a revisioning of what that 5-year maintenance can look like in street maintenance. Corey spent a lot of time with our public works manager over the last couple of months identifying our key areas. And it sounds like that's been very successful. Following the council meeting and approval to purchase that equipment, the asphalt paver and the plow truck have been acquired. They got those as soon as they were just on the market yet. And as discussed at that time, the October 23rd meeting, the funding for these purchases would be done through an equipment certificate, which we anticipated would probably come in 2024, just giving time for acquisition of equipment and everything. And as quickly as Foster and his team got to acquiring the equipment while it was on the market, Mr. Graff got immediately onto the financing component. So we have in front of council tonight a resolution that would approve the sale of an equipment certificate to Cornerstone State Bank using a Minnesota Rural Water Association mini loan program. That's a program that generally allows for better interest rates for cities. And also allows local financial institutions an opportunity to purchase that debt. It was offered to local financial institutions, Cornerstone State Bank here in town, so they were posted. And so the resolution in front of City Council for $488,000 at 5.10 interest rate would, if approved by council, it would close December 1st, and we would have the funds necessary to finance the purchase of that equipment.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for adopting resolution R 2023-037, approving the sale of 2023 A Series General Obligation Equipment Certificate totaling $488,000 to Cornerstone State Bank of Sueur.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay, Mr. Tui. The ayes have it. Moving on. Item 7C, approval of traffic control changes. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To our knowledge, City Council hasn't addressed any of these in recent years, but it is allowed by City Council that if City Council wishes to make changes to traffic control around town within city limits, council has the ability to do so. The police department and public works departments have had conversations over the past year over several intersections and what's the best way to handle certain intersections that are currently uncontrolled. And we have a lot of uncontrolled intersections in this community, and city councils in the past have addressed these. One at Inner Drive and South Park Lane, which was uncontrolled for a period of time, is now controlled. Another one at Regency and South Park Lane, which was also uncontrolled for many, many years before stop signs were put in place. And in discussion between Public Works and the police department, they recognized 4 intersections that they would like to address with controls for safety of not only vehicle traffic, but also pedestrians and bicycle traffic. And those are outlined in the packet. The inserted controls would be at Central Street and Park Lane, Peck Street and Hazel Street, where there is already a control. We would just be swapping where the stop signs are. And then Cantwell Street at both South 2nd and South 3rd, both of those intersections are currently uncontrolled. And there are, even in discussions this morning, Foster and I recognize there are probably a couple of other intersections that we'd be interested in teasing out with the police department. So we'll have that conversation and may have some further recommendations down the line. With any traffic controls, of course, we would do a media blitz and education for the public to make sure that the public is aware of these changes. Also do heightened patrols from the police department to ensure that everyone is well aware of the changes that are being made and is taking the changes in a safe manner.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions regarding this matter? I did take the liberty today to, when I was out driving, I went to all these intersections, so I'm very familiar with all of them. And I can see some of the challenges there. So with that, I will entertain any motions to approve these modifications. So thank you, Mr. Dewey. Second by Councilmember Williams. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 7D, COVID-19 leave program expiration. Mr. Roby, you want to review this with us, please?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Back on October 11th, 2021, early on in the COVID-19 pandemic, City Council authorized the establishment of a program by which full-time employees could take advantage of 80 hours of paid leave to either deal with a COVID-19 related illness for themselves or a family member. The goal was recognize that we don't want employees coming to work sick. And again, this was fairly early in the first 6 months of the pandemic, so there were still lots of unknowns. So we wanted to ensure the safety of our staff and the general public. And also the reality was at that time that the state was mandating some pretty heavy rules about when you can and cannot go into a workplace. And not everyone in the city can work remotely. And so for some people, if the state said you had to be home for 2 weeks, you had to be home for 2 weeks, and then you may have to burn some PTO. So city council said, we'll allow 80 hours. Everyone has 80 hours of COVID leave. HR Director Lawrence and I first visited about this a few months ago and looked at maybe bringing it to city council. The Department of Health and Human Services did officially end the COVID-19 emergency with legislation on May 11th of this year. And as such, and we haven't had any COVID leave use since April of 2023. So at the expiration of the statewide emergency, we thought it an appropriate time to ask city council to consider sunsetting the COVID-19 leave program.
Any questions for Mr. Roby? I do remember implementing this policy back in 2021. In some ways, it seems like a long time ago, and others not too long ago. So with that, I will entertain any motion to approve the expiration of the city's COVID-19 leave program effective November 13, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Swanberg, seconded by Councilmember Sullivan. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Our next item, resolution R 2023-039, the LRIP application, North 4th Street. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, inviting Mr. Beanfang to come forward again tonight with an item that's an extension of the discussion around the 10-year CIP from just a few minutes ago. And with that, I'll let Corey take it over.
All right, thank you, Mr. Roby. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. So the agenda item before you tonight is LRIP. It stands for Local Road Improvement Project. And it's a grant funding program that's made available. And I'll go into a little greater detail about the program, but recognizing some consistency to the 10-year plan and the current solicitation for the 2023 LRP program. Had some discussion with Joe about, just what would be a recommendation to move forward with an application. And it's fitting in the sense that the first project in the 10-year plan recognizes the 2025 project. In the LRP discussion, I'm just going to reference it as North 4th Street because that'll be important in how we capture that in the application. But it's the first project in our CIP that we would move forward to implement next. And fitting, I think the discussion here tonight is that it's a really good candidate for LRIP. And so that's the reason for some of the timing here. It's probably the most applicable project in our 10-year plan for LRP, and I'll explain why. LRP, it's a funding program. It's set for counties and cities to receive financial aid. It's a grant to repair infrastructure, transportation, roadway related. Deficiencies in transportation, both from a vehicle and pedestrian standpoint, I think the box is checked on North 4th Street, as well as drainage. Drainage is a huge piece, and as Joe alluded to, kind of similar challenges on South 5th, 6th, and 7th we have on North 4th Street, where there's a lack of storm sewer witnessed by the ponding and the flooding that we've heard about. If you study really closely there, you'll see there's kind of two legs of red. That would be to bring storm sewer up to serve North 4th Street and the rest of the neighbors to the east, North 5th and 6th. And so that's a huge piece, and I think it does make it a good and suitable candidate for LRP. And really kind of the final piece is for those that were present on council when we were planning for the South 36th Street project, South Main Street. Council at the time was in discussions with the county, that partnership, and there was a commitment through a memorandum of agreement that 37, which is North 4th Street, was going to be turned back to the city. And there was really a recognition of that turn back of 112 became a county road. So now you have Cassat 22 kind of on the bottom side of the Sueur. The old 112, that's a county road. And then we have Kingsway in a community of our size, probably wasn't real fitting and probably a good use of transportation network to have then another county road in the middle. And so the Sueur County there was a discussion and made a commitment to turn back North 4th. So I think as we talk through this too, there's a story to be told, a turn back from a state to a county, county to a city. And so I think it's just capturing need. That's what you're trying to communicate in an LRP application. So if you don't mind, Joel. So further kind of background, Sueur County was successful in an LRP application for the CASAT 36 project, South Main Street. So that project was applied for in 2020, kind of early planning. They were successful in receipt of that in 2021. And it was applied as part of their county allocation and commitment to South Main Street. So that was, kind of locally a recognized success and really a kind of, exact application of LRP and what we're going to maybe try to capture as a city on North 4th Street. The 2023 solicitation, there's 103 million available. This is set aside through that bonding process. The LRP program then is funded through that. The goal is they have some different disbursements. So in 2021, you can kind of see there on the screen the award allocation across these 4 categories: county, state aid, city, small city, and township. We would fall in the small city. In the current 2023 solicitation, they're looking to try to have 30% of the allocated money go to small cities and townships. So, approximately 38% the last time, a goal of a minimum of 30 this time. As I alluded to, it's reconstruction type projects. There's no minimum award, and we would recommend to be pretty strategic in the application, and we'd certainly take something less than the full award, but the maximum award is 1.5 million. And as a kind of a requirement, if you are successful, they like to see project construction in a 2-year window. And so it fits really well if we're going to be making planning strategically to a 25 project. This one would fit really well for that. If you don't mind, Joel. So background, application deadline is December 8th. We're tight, but I wouldn't say we're undoable. The feasibility is there to apply. We have a pretty robust kind of idea of what this will take from the 36 application. One of the uniquenesses is Sueur is not a state aid city. So when you're going for some of these funding, opportunities, I'll call it, we all the time need a sponsor in the city of Sueur. So Sueur County would be a sponsor, they're really a fiscal agent to be able to receive that allotment if our application is successful. We did reach out to Sueur County, just kind of verbally got their support. They have to recognize that formally in a board action, and right now that would be provided tonight. Council is receptive of this discussion. They would be prepared and prepping to pass that resolution on November 28th. That puts us in time for the December 8th application. So it feels like we have those pieces in place. Application packages, they include obviously project description, some supporting graphics, all things that the 10-year plan has, and kind of reinforcing that need and some preparation. We're not just crafting a project for this program. We've been planning, and this is a program that fits our planning. Scope and schedule, the city resolution saying I as a city, support, the council supports an application. We'd have to get that county sponsor resolution and then letters of support. Those are really huge. And feels like this corridor is fitting. We've got some farm to market that's really important in LRP. We've got some industry on the north end, school, church, and so it feels like we can capture. We've got some public works facilities that are started off on North 4th Street. So it's kind of that full body story to be told about the need and just the regional benefit, really. It feels like this is a good candidate. We would be looking to amend the plan slightly. As Joe was talking through it from a city staff perspective, when we're looking to prioritize that need, there is a cost element to it. There's an affordability funding piece to it, and that's really what guides the size of projects. And recognition that the North 4th Street project kind of in and of itself is greater than we would probably want to take on as a city without support. I think to capture full opportunity here, we'd want to be county road to county road connection. And so we would look to amend it if successful and want to get all the way to Dakota Street. So it'd be a little bigger project than planned for, but for LRP, we're going to go bridge to Dakota. So that's the reason for the graphic there on the right. If you don't mind, Joel. So really, it's a recognition that continued commitment to the 10-year CIP. If you have an opportunity to go after funding, it really seems like it's a win locally. It's a really competitive program. So you want to ensure that you kind of check in some of those minimum boxes. I think North Fork does. South Main Street was a 50-50, and we were successful on that. So some of it matters where you're located in the state. It was the only county application that year. So some of those things too just align, and you're successful. And the county was awarded 1.2 million. So these are some money changing opportunities, but it would help reduce that local burden. As the mayor alluded to, these next projects are all on the city to afford. So any external funding is a big deal. Awards are anticipated late spring, so that kind of fits really well. We can do some preliminary engineering and get a sense of what's that true look of project. We can still plan that north end and drop it later. None of those things worry me too much from a standpoint of schedule. And as I alluded to, I think North Fork is really that project that fits. It just has some uniqueness to it. The turn back, this location, regionally significant to the county, and now it's going to be really significant to the city as it being turned back. And so just feels like it's got those little extras. And so really the action tonight is to recognize, I guess, a formal request to prepare a LRP application and submit by December 8th for the cities for the North 4th Street reconstruction project. The resolution tonight is a required application step for sure, but it also, I think, has some transparency as we're going out and getting letters of support and kind of advocating for the support of this project. Definitely wanted to understand and make sure council was aware and supportive of that. And then it also times well for that county support resolution. So happy to have any questions or any other, discussion on this request tonight for the LRP for North 4th Street.
Thank you, Mr. Beanfang. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Beanfang? I want to personally, on behalf of the council, thank the staff for being out and ahead of this project with these types of programs. We got to take advantage of whatever there is out there for us. And we appreciate you doing all this work for that. So with that, I will entertain anybody with a motion to for this city council to approve resolution R 2023-039, authorizing the pursuit of 2023 local road improvement program funding for the North 4th Street reconstruction project.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Tui, thank you. Seconded by Mr. Tui. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Beanfang, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving back to agenda item number 7E. No, that's what we're on now. We're going back to.
So now we'll be on 7F,
Thank you.
which was 4I.
7F. And I don't have it in front of me at the moment.
Delinquent accounts.
So with that, Mr. Roby, you want to kind of give us a summary on that?
I would, if council would bear with me for a moment. Should pull up the news, yes. I'll pull this up in the actual agenda online so that everyone can see.
If you're looking for that, again, a recap on that. This is the policy for the city as far as collecting delinquent utility accounts.
Guess it's
Goes to the middle.
There we go.
Good.
All right, so quick summary. So previously, City Council held a public hearing earlier this fall. Backing up a little bit further, city staff sent out letters in early September to all delinquent account utility account holders, stating what the delinquent balance was, explaining the process to them, explaining when the public hearing would be, inviting them to the public hearing. Council will recall, we did have an individual come forth at the public hearing with some questions and concerns about some of his accounts from a landlord standpoint. We've reached the point that City Council has reached every year for the past number of years, which is typically the first meeting in November, where we staff present the final list of delinquent accounts as of the date of the City Council meeting, and present that to the City Council and ask present a resolution and ask for council adoption of that resolution that would allow staff to then share that final list with the city, with LaSalle County Assessor's Office, who would then add those balances to the 2024 property taxes for collection. What's unique about not unique about the process, because this process has been followed similarly each of the last number of years. What's unique about the November meeting versus a public hearing and the original call for the public hearing in September is that at the meeting, as part of the packet, the actual account list is provided as well, and that's in keeping with past practice as well, where the list itself is shared with the public.
Very good. Any questions? I'm sure there is. Mr. Tui.
Just discussion. Give me 5 minutes. I did some digging on this. And last year, and correct me, Mr. Groff, if I'm wrong, this $384,000 number was $246,000. We have realized a 56% increase in unfunded utility, unpaid utility. That money's not free. MMPA doesn't give us a break to pay them, when we get paid. So what I did, what concerns me is that I'm the only one that's bringing this up. And if $384,000 and 438 delinquent letters out of 1,650 households is apparently acceptable to this council.
No, I disagree.
Well,
I think, Mr. Tui, I think everybody on this council is as concerned as you are. I think what we disagree on is how we go about collecting it. That's the core.
Then I'm gonna go.
So don't accuse us of not caring or not wanting to collect this money. It's all about how we're gonna go about collecting it.
Right, and that's through the property.
And you've got about 3 minutes.
246, Mr. Kraft, I contacted him last week. We've received 202 of that. Okay, so that's 80%. Now, I checked with New Prague. New Prague, twice the population, 70% more households. Their same resolution amount, $1,335. They have 5 names on their list. We have 152. I checked with St. Peter, 3 times the population, more than double the households. They're at 195,000. 50% of 4,000 population was Sueur, and their loss rate, where they write off, is 0.1%. I think we can't do anything until, and if anybody decides to change anything, until May 1st. I mean, we're in the cold weather. I understand that. But I think that we're missing our fiduciary responsibility here by covering this. Okay, what if it goes up the same next year? Now we're going to be looking at $500,000 at some point. And to Councilman Sullivan's concern, when we talked about this before, on, off, on, off, on. Well, if you look at New Prague, and if you look at St. Peter, there's 60 days. On the 61st day, you can be cut off. Now, the nice thing about but the manageable part of that is that you're not going to have $7,000, $8,000, $5,000, $6,000 worth of unpaid bills. You're going to have 2 months. And the individual has to pay whatever the city determines it costs them to re-hook it up and reconcile their bill, period. And you have $1,300 instead of $384,000. My piece, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Sutton, please.
Just for give that statement, essentially, we had this policy when I joined the council of shutting the meters off. And it wasn't functional because the majority of the people that are on that list are rental properties.
No, I checked.
Maybe not this time.
90%, according to
Hear
Mr.
me
Gray.
out though,
Huh?
at the time, the
Yeah.
majority were rental properties.
Yep.
And the tenants would leave,
And my problem
people would
would
move out, and then we'd have to send it to collection.
And here's a question I would have. I'm a property owner. I own a fourplex. I'm renting to Councilman Sullivan. Councilman Sullivan is contracted with the city to purchase utilities, right? It's in his name.
No, the property owner,
Property owner.
as the property owner, it's
owns
their
the
contract.
utility coming to the-
So as a renter, you don't get a bill that says your name on it?
Yes, you do, but the obligation ultimately is on the property owner.
And they know that going in.
They do.
Fair enough. So corrected. Anyway, I think something needs to be done. This can't continue. I mean, 56% in 1 year. And I know we added 3 months worth of penalties and da. But that's a huge jump. And the list. New Prague's got 5, we got 152. That ain't right in my opinion. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Tui. Before I take this to action, I'd like to have Mr. Roby real quick, just explain the process and how things work with getting utility certified. So,
Yes, from this point, if council adopts the resolution to certify and assess, then Mr. Graff works with the Sueur County Assessor's Office. They will set a date and time by which Mr. Graff has to prepare the list. What we're asking for in this resolution is, this is the list of possible accounts that we can certify. What is almost a certainty is that a portion of these accounts will pay off their balance between tonight and when Mr. Graff presents it to the county. We don't have to come back to council and say, well, we got a new list, because if someone pays off their bill and they're on this list right now, they will not get sent to the county. So the amount will decrease. And in the past, that list has been due essentially by the end of the calendar year. So we do provide, we do give a cutoff because it gets a little bit difficult. Someone will come with a $500 check and they'll say, this is for my utility bill. And we have to make sure that it gets applied to the correct certified amount before it goes to the county or their current balance. So we do cut off a little bit before the end of the year just to ensure that we're applying it to the right account. Mr. Graff then sends the final list with the parcel ID numbers, essentially as you see it in the resolution here, to the county assessor's office. They apply that to the taxes for that parcel ID in 2024.
and all those property taxes aren't paid.
If property taxes are not paid, then the county follows its own process of,
I'm sorry, property taxes and assessments. That would be.
yes, so if any portion, once an amount's been assessed to the property taxes, it is considered part of the property taxes. And so therefore, any component of the property taxes itself that's unpaid is considered an unpaid property tax. So these amounts are considered a tax once they are assessed. And so if you become delinquent in your property taxes, then you risk going into foreclosure, forfeiture. And, I would say we see relatively few of those properties. We do work with the county on those properties when they do go into forfeiture, but that's a multi-year process with the county working with the individual too. And that's all public data as well. So we can see who's struggling to pay the property taxes and when to pay it off.
Does this list get published outside of here?
It's available online. In the past, at times in the past, City Council has opted to publish in the newspaper. It has not been published in the newspaper the last 3 years, I believe.
Is there any particular reason why not?
Prerogative of the city council, I believe, the last 3 years.
That's a different discussion.
Just to touch on something before Councilmember Tui, the numbers that you were comparing were pretty close to kind of what Joe touched on. The 246 that you referenced was what we ultimately sent to the county. At this point in time, it was 273. So it's still the same big percentages.
That's not my argument.
Yeah.
These guys don't.
Well, about 25,000 was paid off between when the list was approved last year and what we sent to the county.
Let's use the number that I remember.
Yep, and it doesn't really change your comparison. It's the same. There's a
It's still
substantial
gone
gap,
up a whole lot since last year.
and primarily because of those delinquent fees. And
$100,000 worth?
well, when I looked at it, I mean, because we cut off, the cutoff date is the end of August. So in 2022, we would have cut that off of when we ran penalties for the service period of July, which would have been the end of August. We didn't start doing that until April, I believe, that year. So really, there was only 5 months of penalties in that assessment amount last year versus this year, it's 12. So it's, and I think I misled that number.
What is the penalty?
5% of the
One time or cumulative?
cumulative balance, not including past late fees that are in there. So it's not being late fee on top of late fee, but their cumulative balance that was ever unpaid at that point.
And I think what we would see in a quick back then active analysis is for any parties who are on the list multiple years, if you were to evaluate 10 of them, let's say 10 property owners who were on last year's list, the same 10 who are on this year's list, if you compare the amounts, I would dare bet that the increase is attributable almost entirely to, a small portion certainly to rate increases and the balance to late fees. So someone who never pays their utility bill might have been assessed $4,000 or $5,000 last year. All of a sudden, when you start doing a cumulative late fee to try to entice that payment, it's $7,000 or $7,300 this year. And I would say, and Mr. Graff can, I think, back me up on this, that from a staff standpoint, this is a conversation that we've had. Mr. Graff, I've been here at the city not quite 3 years. Mr. Graff has been here a year and a half. And we've talked about this several times. What would be better? Is there something that would be easier? And I know we brought it up in April of 2022 when we brought it to council as well. Is it 6 one half dozen of the other? No, I mean, administratively, in some ways, it's easier to manage it this way. In other ways, it's trickier. And you're right, at this point, we are ultimately trusting the tax payment system to collect that revenue for us. And if everyone pays their property taxes, it'll be 100% collection plus a 6% fee or whatever council authorizes. If someone doesn't pay the property taxes, obviously we don't get the money, but we don't get it. You're right, it's delayed. I mean, we get
Not only that, but we're paying $284,000 or whatever that number is. Then it's coming out of someplace. Taxpayers are paying for that because there's no free money.
Well,
And you compare that with $1,300 from New Prague, they're doing something right, I think, that we're not. And St. Peter, I've got and I've got the emails you're welcome to see if you'd like to see them. St. Peter, 3 months out, they're only 12 grand in the hole. 3 months late, it's 12,000. The majority of it's within 30 days. Unlike us, I mean, I looked at that, I don't know if anybody else's jaw dropped, but when you see $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 over and over again, something ain't right, folks.
Well, Mr. Tui, as we move ahead, we cannot change our policy this time of year.
No, I get it. I understand.
This is something we can certainly keep having discussions about in council and outside of council if you wish to visit with me about this. So with that, if there's no other questions, I would like the council to consider approving resolution R 2023-041 to certify the delinquent utility accounts in appendix A and the total amount of $384,371.54 in the Sueur County for collections of 2024.
So
I think Mr. Schleter first, second, Mr. Tui second. Any other comments, questions, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to reports and items of appreciation. Council members, this is your opportunity to share what's going on in the community and what's going on with your commissions. And as always, we'll start with, well, Mr. Honey, that's gone tonight. Takes us to Mr. Schleter.
On the 25th, I attended a Sueur County officials meeting in Montgomery. On the 2nd, I attended online Climate Smart Municipalities meeting. Thursday, November 9th, Planning Commission meeting held a public hearing and they recommended to rezone the EDA Highway 169 land to guide the property as highway commercial and rezone as B2 highway commercial. Tomorrow, I have a Highway 169 Coalition Corridor annual meeting in Plymouth.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Sullivan.
The only thing I have tonight is a transit meeting tomorrow at 2:30 at the services building.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanberg.
I would just like to give a sincere thanks to all of our veterans, having recently celebrated Veterans Day. Special thanks to those who were involved in the programs that took place at the school. It was very well done and certainly appreciate your service.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilmember Tui.
just that I'll be joining Councilman Sullivan at the transit meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
HIRA meeting this week, and I'd like to kind of add on to Mr. Edberg's comment about the Christmas in the Valley being a collaborative effort. I feel Johnny Taser also fits that. There's a number of celebrations in town that fit that same theme, that it's just not, he's not alone. So we're very fortunate to have these groups are willing to collaborate, all the community groups together to make Sueur have these nice community events. So kudos to them.
Thank you. And I don't have much to share tonight other than I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Get out and do the Sueur Turkey Trot, sponsored by the Rotary. So hope to see everybody out at that. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, Councilmember Dewey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?